Hello and welcome to Sean's Check-In. Feel free to follow my professional Facebook page, Sean P. Daughtry, LICSW, to watch my other check-in videos. Or over on YouTube at Sean D. Sean's Little Check-In or Sean's Check-In. Today I wanted to expand some more on this whole concept of reciprocal relationships and more of the challenges of achieving widespread reciprocal relationships in the general population of, around the world as much as possible. So I last time the other day talked about reciprocal relationships and transactional relationships and how authoritarianism is a big factor in many transactional relationships and is certainly a big component of how reciprocal relationships are challenged and remain limited throughout societies. So more along those lines, I understand and I want to clearly state that obviously there's a lot of other factors such as gender around a challenge for reciprocal relationships to be more and more generalized through a general population of countries. For the longest time, of course, it's been very patriarchal around the world, where relationships between men and women has been more uneven and hierarchical, with men more explicitly in charge. And certainly in some countries, such as in the Middle East, that is officially, explicitly still the case. And in other Western democracies, such as here in America, there is this ongoing challenge around having women be more and more consistently treated and viewed as equal. So getting more and more reciprocal relationships happening between men and women, while certainly is an ideal and something that is more and more practiced, the actual application of that continues to be challenging and something that is worked on being developed more and more between men and women in the general population of the United States, for example, as well as other countries. This whole concept of reciprocal relationships is not a new concept by any means. Buddha and Christ, for example, each within their teachings really implied pretty strongly the importance of reciprocal, equal to equal, heart to heart relationships that are fostered by compassion, mutual compassion, and curiosity, which I've touched upon quite a bit before. So Buddha, with his teaching loving kindness to all beings, and Christ, for example, with his teaching do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think that's the wording. Really within that is the understanding that positive compassion and empathy filled reciprocal relationships where each person has inherent worth as much as you do has certainly been there. But for the longest time, that's been more within the domain of spiritual practice and an ideal to be reached. Finally, in secular societies over the centuries, here and there, that's been practiced more, this whole concept of reciprocal relationships. And it's come through, for example, in certain segments of populations, such as between equal ranked soldiers in an army. There's been more capacity there for having reciprocal relationships. But in a generalized population in a country, that is very much historically quite a new thing. Democracies that have been in practice for the past less than 300 years have certainly implied within that pretty directly the importance of equal to equal reciprocal relationships, with the understanding that people in elected positions of power are there to, by the blessing of the voting population, to then foster reciprocal relationships amongst the general population, doing things as much as possible for the good of all, or at least that's the ideal. Of course, the practice of all this continues to be so challenging, whereas people get into government and have more of an authoritarian bent, often to varying degrees, around their approach. So this is still quite a endeavor, and a relatively new one, to generalize reciprocal relationships amongst people throughout a general population. We still have a lot of, well, a long ways to go with having that being more and more a practice and not simply an ideal and something that is in place to only a certain degree. This comes up as an ongoing challenge and struggle, if you will, between the sexes, men and women, that is, but also between other whole groups of white people still being more in power over minority ethnic groups, people of color is what I'm saying. Same between religions. So there's all this struggle to move away from this authoritarian, dominant, submissive dynamic of relationships into more and more equal, reciprocal relationships. It is still something that is being worked towards. So in my role as a psychotherapist, person by person who comes to see me, that's a philosophy I'm clearly working from as best as possible, to help have each person I work with develop a sense of reciprocity with themselves and other people around them. And that often means helping people, for example, to leave toxic relationships where reciprocity is very limited, not consistent, or not necessarily happening at all. So that's more I wanted to touch upon about what I'm working towards in the movement I'm with and a part of, that I think perhaps most of you watching this are also a part of as well, and wanting to have. And again, as I've stated before, we're definitely at a crossroads around the where we're going with developing more and more reciprocal relationships as a culture and as a set of cultures around the world. So that's just what I wanted to touch upon about these other domains of challenge around developing more and more reciprocal relationships, as I've already defined that term reciprocal relationships in previous videos. Feel free to share in the comment section with me your thoughts about what I've been discussing. And more, what I hope to do in this platform is to share some practical elements of what I do and what others can do to foster reciprocal relationships in their lives, including, for example, getting more and more away from this whole concept of toxic masculinity, where men have been so socialized over the centuries and millennia to believe that power over equals true full manhood as a successful male adult, where it's power over women and possibly dominance over some amount of other men too, to show and feel and believe that you are then a fully grown, successful man. That is something I'm glad to see has been named as toxic masculinity, which has been written about at length elsewhere, and that we are gradually working towards getting away from. And again, to instead foster equal to equal reciprocal relationships where compassion and curiosity and an exchange of those between others is the basis of healthy relationship. Thank you for tuning in, and see you another time during another video.